Hello, everyone. We are thrilled to have Hen, GM and Vice President for Google Cloud Runtimes at Google Cloud. Hen, great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Johnny. I'm super excited to be with you here live.
Absolutely. So, is this your first time in India?
It is. It's been a long time. I wanted to mark that.
Awesome. So, where have you been? What have been your experiences in India so far?
So not much. Google Cloud kept me busy with lots of customer visits, meeting with people like you, analysts, press. But I'm excited tomorrow ahead of Connect.io to meet some of the developer community, and then the next day just meeting my own team.
Awesome, awesome. So, Hen, you have a very interesting title, the GM and VP for Cloud Runtime. So, a lot of developers, including me, are curious to understand and know what you actually do as the leader at Google Cloud.
So I've been at Google for 8.5 years, and I'm responsible for everything containers related. So I'm responsible, I'm the GM for Kubernetes and our serverless portfolio. And it's important for us because we try to differentiate that from the entire developer toolchain and just focusing on the runtime, which is what we are optimizing for.
Cool. And how long have you been with Google?
As I mentioned, 8.5 years.
Wow.
I've joined the early days of Kubernetes to lead the Kubernetes and Google Kubernetes Engine. Back then it was GKE, Google Container Engine.
Right, right.
With a spelling typo. And it's been quite a journey since then, just starting from a very small team. Google Cloud was small to where we are today.
So tell us about your journey towards Google.
When I started my career a long time ago, I was actually working in an IT organization, building a PaaS for mainframe developers.
Wow.
And my passion has always been, how can I empower developers to do more? And I also always noticed that there is that balance you have to get between, on one hand, to do a lot of automation and take the burden of developers. However, building a black box is problematic because then it's actually very hard to be agile. And it also feels disempowering when you can't understand how things work. So throughout my career, building that for mainframes, we did not strike that balance well. And then I continued into HP software where we were building an orchestration system. And I remember I was talking with my own team. Said like, hey, we're building this DevOps tool, start using it, right? I was an engineering director. And my team told me, it's not open source. We don't want to use it. Like, that was interesting. And then seeing that, I think magic or opportunity with open source, for me, again, it was a long time ago, made me thought that combination can be very powerful. So when I looked for my next role, this space of containers and open source was very interesting. And I remember telling the recruiter that this is my dream job.
Nice. So I have a lot of friends at Google, and they only say good things about working for Google. What's your favorite part of being at Google?
First of all, there's so many things I love about Google. For sure, the things that I love the most is just the people I work with. There's so many people that I can't believe that they are like my colleagues. They are so smart, but they are so helpful. I mean, it's so easy at Google to just pick up the phone or send a chat and say, hey, what do you think about that? Can you come and help me? Or get some advice from folks. And this is really, what excites me every day.
Awesome. So let's shift gears and talk technology. So when I first came across your profile, I was fascinated by the title of VP of Cloud Runtimes. Now, as developers, runtimes only mean Visual Basic or .NET Common Language Runtime or JVM or most recently Go Runtime. So what exactly are these runtimes and how did they evolve over a period of time?
When you think about the time when we had VMs, as an example, so if I was building an application, when I deployed it, I actually had to think across the stack. And when I think about runtimes, or maybe modern runtimes, or cloud-native runtimes, the evolution that we have seen is allowing us as developers, as application operators, as platform teams, to think about the application and really have an application-centric. So if you ask me what Kubernetes is an application platform management,
right.
Okay, allowing you to manage containers applications at scale. And you can think about that journey, first of all, Docker as a company, and of course Docker the project. I remember as a developer, this was like mind-blowing, okay? Having that lightweight packaging of your applications, your dependencies, and making that actually portable was a big change.
Right.
Okay, as a developer, testing things became easier, like your velocity. And then I think with Kubernetes, we're just creating that ecosystem. Okay, I have this container, I have this application. What else do I need? And what we've seen with Kubernetes, I think that there are three things that I really appreciate. So the first one is, of course, Docker was decoupling the application from the infrastructure, but what Kubernetes added is that abstraction layer.
Right.
Okay, it's not just decoupling, but now I have a programming way to talk about this infrastructure and how it can suit me. And not just that, it was also allowing me, providing me tools how to scale it, how to monitor, how to automate, in addition to that. So that was one. The second thing with this application-centric way in Kubernetes, it created an application ecosystem that was also very important. And last but not least, Kubernetes allowed developers to innovate wherever they needed, because it is portable and working, becoming the de facto standard.
Right. So does your portfolio include anything that executes code, from VMs to serverless?
So we're focusing on Kubernetes and the serverless. So everything cloud native, which is an application-centric way. And I think that the way we are thinking about it may be a little bit different from others, is that the main construct is that container.
Right.
And within that, we actually see our serverless, our cloud run portfolio complements Kubernetes. And it's all a matter of how much control you want to have. Going back to the point I made before, how much of a black box am I willing to accept?
Right.
Versus how much control do I want to have. So we're thinking about it as a portfolio, and we're really investing in interoperability between the two. So you can really take a container from Cloud Run to GKE and back.
Perfect. So, Hen, you have been in the industry for a long time. You have been at the other side of the spectrum, running IT, and now you're actually defining the platforms. So what are the top technology trends and shifts that you have observed in the landscape?
So I've seen a lot. I would just say that I started as a system mainframe engineer.
Wow.
So you can imagine that I've seen a lot of changes. But if I will pick a few, I really appreciate the rise of open source and open source technologies. One of the things that I like about it is what you see is what you get.
Right.
I think it's really empowering as a technology. And a motto that we have within our team is, when you think about what to open source is whether you want to be differentiated or simply different.
Right.
And if you're simply different, that's probably not a good use of time or innovation. Because in those areas, I think being a developer these days is actually really hard. There are so many things that you need to learn, and now with AI and everything. So if we can help developers and change and reduce the friction, I think we're helping innovation overall.
Absolutely. I think the single most important lever in the last 2 decades has been open source, no doubt about it. And how can we not touch upon Kubernetes when we are talking about open source? And just last month, I've been a part of the 10th anniversary celebrations of Kubernetes. I can't believe it's been a decade since Kubernetes has been out. And Google has played a pivotal role in bringing Kubernetes to the community. So how do you see Google continuing to innovate and invest and take Kubernetes into its next decade?
So first of all, from the early days, one of the things that we were worried about is a success disaster. I still remember, like it was yesterday, Pokemon Go. It was one of the first big workloads. We were actually surprised that it's running on the platform, and then we learned that it's going to be launched globally. And what happened, in essence, at the end of the day, was that the traffic that we saw was 50 times more than what we expected. And you know what? Kubernetes scaled, and it worked. But together with that, when you think about that kind of success, you need to plan for it.
Right.
And the things that we've been doing, for example, is investing in testing, both with having people write tests, but also giving credits to the CNCF to run those tests.
Right.
On different clouds, or documentation and UX, to name a few. Other thing that we've been doing, it's Kubernetes 1.3.2, and so like all of those releases, some people take it for granted. There's a lot of work behind the scene to make that happen. People are writing code and proposing changes, and people have to review. So we continue to create capacity for folks, leaders, to review that. And we invest in upgrade. One of the things that I think was an amazing project that we've published recently was actually working with the Go team and making sure that the investment in Go and the upgrade of Go will not break Kubernetes. And it was important because there was some vulnerability fixes that we had to put into Kubernetes. So think about, investing like across technologies and across teams just to make sure that the project will continue to work. So it's really all around from an investment perspective.
Got it. Yeah, Go and Kubernetes go hand in glove, and touching any of these will have an impact on the other communities. Yes. Excellent. So now I want to represent the larger developer community and bring up a topic that is trending, generative AI. So where do you see Kubernetes meeting Gen AI or Gen AI meeting Kubernetes? How do they work together?
From the early days of Kubernetes, one of the important things for us was to make sure that it will support all workloads. And it took time. When we talked the first time on stateful workloads, I still remember people say, hey, we will never run it on Kubernetes. And there was, I think it took years to do that. But it's important because you don't want teams and platform teams to be busy with migrations or integrations. I mean, again, if I think about my background, that's where I invested a lot of time in that IT organization that I worked in, with a MQC, like a lot of those kind of transformation and so forth. So for the success and the sustainability of Kubernetes, I think Kubernetes should play a role. Right. So that's one. Luckily, a lot of the characteristics that I mentioned before in Kubernetes are still applicable for new AI workloads. Specifically, abstraction of the infrastructure is critical. You think about different accelerators, different storage solution, just supporting velocity.
Right.
I think I've never seen a space in tech evolve so fast as AI. It's like, you close your eyes for 2 minutes and then there are some new trends coming up. So that velocity is also important. And of course, scale. Okay, Kubernetes solves for scale. And those large language models, they continue to be bigger because their size then impacts the features and capabilities. And I can share with you that some of the training that we've been running on GKE, of course, much of it needed really large clusters.
Of course, powered by TPUs or GPUs.
Yes, and so I think it's been a very natural thing for Kubernetes to play a role. Just to give you an idea, over the past year, we saw 900% growth of GPU consumption on GKE. We've been drinking our own champagne with Vertex AI running on GKE, DeepMind running on GKE, as well as many of our large customers as well. So I think there is that fit. But I think there hasn't been a better time to be a platform engineer.
Absolutely.
Because those scale problems that we need to solve are super interesting. Optimization for cost is interesting. You can see me smiling, right? Those kind of problems are amazing.
Excellent.
So maybe, Jani, maybe I can ask for your perspective as well. So with your expertise, so how do you see that, like the adoption of Kubernetes and AI? What are you seeing?
So two of my favorite technologies, one is definitely cloud native, powered by Kubernetes. The other one is Gen AI. So I look at it in two different dimensions. One is Gen AI infused Kubernetes. So what I mean by that is, when you bring LLMs to the control plane of Kubernetes, it can make a lot of decisions that will assist scheduling and the control plane capabilities. So the AI-infused Kubernetes will become self-healing, will become autonomous, will become much more efficient in the way the decisions are taken. And as these LLMs evolve and become better at reasoning and remediation and root cause analysis, it's almost like placing an SRE right inside the control plane of Kubernetes. That's what I call as the Gen AI infused Kubernetes. So Kubernetes taking advantage of generative AI. Of course, the second one, the most common use case that you talked about is Kubernetes infused Gen AI, where we use Kubernetes as the platform of choice for the entire life cycle, from pre-training to training to deployment, inference, fine-tuning, all of this. And today we have a lot of case studies. For example, Hugging Face inference endpoints run on Kubernetes. TGI, which is one of their flagship inference engine, is powered by Kubernetes. OpenAI published a case study on how they actually run training on Kubernetes. And every hyperscaler talks about how they are basically surfacing their accelerated compute through Kubernetes. So that is the Gen AI as a workload taking advantage and exploiting the core capabilities of Kubernetes. And I think this is a symbiotic relation. It may sound very cliche, but that is the fact.
That's interesting. Before we started, you mentioned that you still remember that day when Google announced that they're going to open source Kubernetes.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned about all of those companies running training and inference, but in fact, today, no matter if you're driving your car or if you're buying online or buying in the store or going to the hospital or going to the bank, most likely it is powered by Kubernetes. So when you look back, so how do you think enterprise should continue and adopt cloud-native technologies?
Yeah. So enterprise adoption of cloud-native, I think the biggest lever for that is app modernization. Because I talk to a lot of enterprises, and their number one reason or the factor that's leading to cloud-native is app modernization. They have a lot of legacy, a lot of monoliths running there, and they want to make them modular, make them composable, microservices ready, and obviously the choice is Kubernetes. So the first step towards embracing cloud native is identifying an app modernization project, a candidate that is good to be migrated to cloud native, and doing a proof of concept, breaking it down into microservices and deploying that on Kubernetes, which is the second step. The third step is driving a part of traffic of your internal application or external application to the new deployment running on Kubernetes and closely monitoring that, making sure that it is living up to the expectations, and then at some point flipping the switch and driving 100% of traffic to your modernized app running on Kubernetes. And once you establish this rhythm and once you bring in the cloud native culture, it's rinse and repeat. You basically handpick a bunch of internal applications or public facing applications, and you go through this process or the pipeline.
Yeah, I think this is a great point around app modernization. I think we see a couple of patterns there, right? Either taking that approach or building a new workloads, again, just getting that best practices, because moving to a cloud native technology, it's not just the technology that changes, it's also the processes, the skill set, and so forth. And speaking about change, we're just a day before Google Connect I/O here in Bangalore. And I remember when we had a Google I/O back in the US, one of the things that developers were asking, hey, how do I become now an AI developer? So what would you tell companies? Should they start adopting this new set of technologies?
Right. So I think there is a lot of hype and there are expectations around generative AI that it is literally the magic. I'm actually seeing marketing teams replacing some team members with LLMs and trying to do something significant in terms of marketing campaigns and lead generation and all of that. So I think the very first thing that the enterprises should do is setting the right set of expectations on what they can derive out of generative AI. What you see in the social media and read about those hyped case studies may not instantly translate because generative AI is definitely a game changer, but it depends a lot on how your internal systems are structured, the quality of data that you bring, and how you are basically plugging in the new generative AI platforms into your existing workflows. Because ultimately, there are rules engines, there is RPA, there are legacy applications, legacy workflows. None of them can be magically replaced with a flip of button or a switch, right? So you need to have realistic expectations on what generative AI can deliver and take a very practical approach towards embracing that.
I think this is a great point. I mean, just thinking about velocity and agility, the experimenting is really critical when adopting that kind of a technology.
Right. So since we are talking about AI, and you have overseen a lot of product development at Google, how do you see AI fundamentally changing product management as a function?
So a couple of things. Actually, so first of all, you mentioned before the Kubernetes infused AI. I think that similar to like any other business, there is an opportunity to think about generative AI within product, okay, and how we can make it more useful to our customers. So I think that would be definitely one category. There is also some experimenting that's saying, hey, maybe we can use generative AI to understand user behavior more, and maybe even accelerate that velocity better. One area which I think is more mature, with tools like we have a Gemini Cloud Assist, is that we see that Gen AI, specifically with Gemini, helps developers be more productive. So within the product, within Google Cloud, we are helping our customers to complete code. And like you mentioned, right, it's important what data you give it. So something that we are also doing, like no matter if you're using a GitHub or GitLab or any other source repository, you can actually train Code Assist with your own code base. So the answers that you get from it are customized and personalized for your code base. And it also allows you to do some code transformation in the context of migrations and so forth. So I think that's a big opportunity.
So it's like RAG, but for code. So it picks up context from your local workspace and applies that. Fantastic. So what are the practical areas where you are applying AI to enhance user experience and developer experience of Google Cloud?
So the first thing I will start with is that, if before being an AI developer was limited for data scientists and so forth, what we see in the future is that every developer is an AI developer. Okay, and we talked before about the importance of reducing the friction and the barrier to entry. And this is where, we invest in a platform like Vertex.
Right.
So Vertex AI has different layers, from the model garden that allows you to work with our own first-party models like Gemini, our open source models like Gemma, and other models, of course, both open source and third-party, to really up the stack to more sophisticated services like grounding, as an example, that really improve the trustworthy of the results. So having that PaaS, or managed service, for AI makes it easy to experiment. So you talked about being practical. That's something we've been doing with our customers all the time. Okay, we're just doing those workshops. And I was just talking with the local team here as well in India, and we were working with customers and saying, hey, let's see how we can innovate. And that's super fun. So that's definitely one area. Another thing is that we are investing in across the stack. Okay, so if you, of course, want to train your own model, if you want to maybe run your own inference as well. So we are leveraging from networking to storage to compute to Kubernetes across the stack, how we can optimize for that scale. And last but not least, we are, of course, infusing AI into our own platform with Gemini Cloud Assist and Gemini Cloud Assist.
So do you think Cloud Assist will eventually become an SRE and DevOps engineer by all by itself?
I don't know. I think that will be very interesting, and time will tell whether we'll get to that. But I do think, I believe in automation, okay? And I think that there are more things that we can automate than we do today.
Right.
And it's a matter of training, but also increasing our confidence as users in what the solution offers. So I think it will take time for that maturity, but I'm optimistic.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of this interesting, insightful discussion. Hen, I want to thank you for joining us and giving valuable insights into how AI is influencing Google Cloud and what is the future of Kubernetes. I know you are here in India for a few more days and you are speaking tomorrow. So looking forward to all the sessions. And thanks everyone for joining us. Have an insightful event coming up tomorrow. And we are going to bring you more interesting discussions and insightful sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.